Okay, this is from the book Best Christian Art by me, Pete Rogers, and we're now in the chapter 19 about Christian literature. This, if you're following in the book, we're starting on page 474. So first of all, Christianity's generated the best novels by far. There's no comparison. The best art. It's just great at generating art and creativity. It gets people to think beyond themselves. In most other cultures, people primarily think, everybody thinks about themselves and their family, but in a lot of cultures, that's it. That's the only thing they think about is themselves and their family. Christianity gets you to think more about the world, society, that life has purpose and meaning, and God's a creator. We can be a creator like Him. We're created in His image and all that. So, anyways, the theme of redemption of Christianity just works for literature and art. Okay, so the best novel of all time is by Charles Dickens, the Englishman, and it's the idea that you can make your life and the life of everyone else around you so much better by having sort of a positive Christian attitude. Be nice, help each other, be grateful, have an attitude of gratitude for what you got. Okay, he turned everything around and he saved Tiny Tim's life. The next one is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, and that's about what happened in France in the 1790s, what a disaster it was. And I think it's a great book for people to read because, in my experience, most Christians are just clueless. They've got this dopey worldview and they think everything's okay and they think society is intact, society cares about them, institutions can be trusted and are going to help them if they need help. Whereas it's quite the opposite. Society wants to get rid of them, okay, to you know what side them, okay? And they think they can trust these institutions. It's ridiculous. Anyways, I think that reading literature wakes you up to how society works. And A Tale of Two Cities, in my experience, is a very accurate book portraying what kind of happens in big cities. Okay, it's very real. Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, the French writer. It's a magnificent book. It's just an awesome book. And, Ayn Rand had described reading a Victor Hugo novel as like entering a cathedral. It's just magnificent. It's spectacular. It's sort of like the height of what humans can be. Jean Valjean is one of the most awesome characters ever in the history of literature. The bishop forgave him, and he devoted his life to being a good man, and he was a great man. And I love the musical from 1985. That soundtrack is just awesome. That song, Bishop Forgiven, it's magnificent. And there's lots of other great songs. The Red and the Black. There's tons of them. I Dreamed a Dream in Days Gone By. When Hope is High and Life Worth Living. It's just one after another. It's magnificent. Okay, Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now, that's a longer book. I would recommend listening to audiobooks if you're going to go through that one. But that was also magnificent. Esmeralda, and then the scene with her mother was awesome. I mean, writing can't get any better than that. Okay, Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Russian writer. I love that book. And again, I listen to it on audiobook. A lot of times I don't have time to read these books in paperback from cover to cover because I'm so busy. But in the car, I got lots of time. Whatever it takes, I'll go through the book. And the big point to learn from Fyodor Dostoevsky is that intellect alone is not enough. Ivan, despite being brilliant, was a screw-up because he just sort of went by intellect alone and he drifted towards atheism. Versus Alyosha, with sort of his Christian mindset, and he's patient and calm and nice, give everybody a chance to talk and help people even if they don't like him at first. And that's the best way to live. Alyosha he starts out being a little bit of a mope and you think he's pathetic, but he ends up being the best person in the whole book. Quo Vadis by Henry Sienkiewicz up in Poland. Magnificent novel, fourth best novel of all time, which puts in a real good contrast between the brutality of the ancient Romans with their slave ownership and their aristocracy versus the early Christians. How they brought on a large scale the ideas of forgiveness and love between non-family members in a big way, and they sort of transformed society. It's a magnificent book. Okay, 1984 by George Orwell. Great book to sort of teach you the reality. He had a lot of experience working in those contexts. Animal Farm is the allegorical version of it. Animal Farm is easier to read. You might want to read that one first, then read 1984. But everybody should read these books. 1984 and Animal Farm and Christmas Carol. Every single person should read the paper version of those cover to cover. They're pretty easy to read. Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, a magnificent book. I recently made a whole book review of that. I made book reviews of most of the books in here. Not all of them. I would say at least half of them. Let's leave it at that. It's a magnificent book, and the main thing is to recognize somebody like a Chillingworth, sort of a fiendish character, because in my experience, they're actually common. I wish they weren't, but they actually are. And even though there's not that many of them, because they're so mischievous, they stand out. And once you know how to recognize them, you'll be less likely to be, harmed by one of them. Pinocchio is just a brimming with optimism, a magnificent book, the best book ever to come out of Italy. It's magnificent. I love Pinocchio. Okay, it's great. The movie 1940 version, Walt Disney version, was also great. I like the paperback version by Roberto Innocenti is the illustrator. It's great. And that's another one you can read cover to cover. It's not that long. Okay, Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. Fun book to read. It's fascinating. He's a great writer, Dan Brown. Lots of cliffhangers from chapter to chapter. Yeah, parts of the book are dishonest and a little bit stupid, but it's so entertaining. It's one of the most fun books you'll ever read. Set in the Vatican. Okay, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Russian-American writer, and she was a genius. She's the smartest woman who ever lived, and that book really shows you what altruism, socialism is all about. I call her the closet Christian because she's such a big promoter of all the Christian writers. But it was a brilliant book. That book had an effect on me too, to sort of like realize what really happens in society, how all these fancy, big names promoting altruism are really some of the worst people you'll ever see in your life. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley just shows there's another road to totalitarianism. It's not just force and brutality. It's also the trap of hedonism and Epicureanism, which weakens people, with drugs, opioids, etc., shallow, and they become atheists and they become, unable to do much. Don Quixote by Miguel Cervantes, the plight of a good man who seeks out to try to make society better, ends up looking ridiculous, but it's a great book. Should have been shorter, but it's still a great book. Okay, a couple more here. Important to Be in Earnest, not a novel, but it's a great play. It's my favorite play. It's real short. You can read it cover to cover. Oscar Wilde was just so fantastic with chiasmus, and I admired, here's this poor Irish guy going to London and becoming the best writer in the whole country. That was, I thought, rather entertaining. He was a Catholic. He screwed up. Obviously, in the end, he became an alcoholic, abandoned his family, which is a disgrace. But he did a lot of good things in his life, a lot of really good things, great things. Ben-Hur, I'm currently reading that right now, and it really starts out boring. The movie was magnificent. I'll get back to you on that, but it was like one of the most famous books ever written in the 1800s. And the 1800s overall were culturally quite superior to the 1900s. Poland by James Michener, that's the best way to learn the history of Poland by far. It's magnificent. Trinity by Leon Uris, I think, is the best introduction to the history of Ireland. Actually, one of the best. It's not so much a history book, it's more of a story book. Poland by Michener, that's a history book. Okay, Trinity by Leon Uris is a storybook of a family in Ireland, let's say from early 1800s to early to mid 1900s. But it was very well written. Sour as a Young Werther, that helps you to think from Goethe. Okay, that book will teach you how to think. Basically, you see how if only Werther had fallen in love with science, he would have been a great scientist instead of a chump. Okay, Fahrenheit 451. It's a good book, not a super great book, but it's still a good book, and it's about how society can collapse if people don't keep reading and cherishing free speech. Charlotte Simmons and A Man in Full by Tom Wolfe. Not the most philosophically deep books, but Tom Wolfe's a magnificent writer, and all the way he uses punctuations and semicolons and onomatopoeia. I learned a lot about him from as far as writing style was concerned, and I enjoyed him. The Kingdom of Speech is actually, I think, a better book in terms of relevance of modern philosophy, but it's a nonfiction book, whereas these are fiction books. Okay, The Greek Way by Edith Hamilton, excellent book, best introduction to the ancient Greeks. I love the ancient Greeks. Arthur Schopenhauer's book, The Guide to Art and Literature, magnificent analysis of what makes a book great and how to write a great book. Romantic Manifesto by Ayn Rand about her writing style and about the writing style of the greatest novels ever written and paintings ever painted. She says that art is the concretization of metaphysics. It's just brilliant. It's great. The Cave in the Light, best philosophy book ever written, and it contrasts both Aristotle and Plato and their view on life. Aristotle was more about freedom. Plato was a little bit trending into collectivism and mysticism. But the contrast of the two carried out through all history up to the modern age is really well done. If you look at the best professors, Rufus Fears is the best history professor ever. Probably one of his favorite books of mine were his Famous Greeks and Ancient Romans, Famous Ancient Greeks and Romans. He has a summary a lot of the greatest books ever written. That's great too. Everything he does is great. He's just a great historian. He's Harvard trained, full of enthusiasm and knowledge, and joviality and good judgment, wisdom, insight. Michael Sugru is a great biology teacher. He has a YouTube channel, Michael Sugru. Great lectures on biology. A bunch of Rufus Fears lectures are also on YouTube. Daniel Robinson was real good on, I think, the history of psychology and philosophy. So those are some great introductions to Christian literature and art. Here is the painting of Don Quixote in his library. You know, he's reading about all the ancient books of chivalry, and he's saying, why is society going into the garbage can? We need to bring back some of these ancient ways. And like I said, that reminds me of a good man with a nostalgic goal of trying to restore something good. Okay, here is Don Quixote when he made his speech that he's going to be a knight errant. And I joked that reminded me of Dr. McDougall when he said he was going to be a nutrition doctor instead of a conventional doctor. And everybody looks at him like, what are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? You know how much money you're going to lose by doing that? Okay, and then all these hypocrites, they felt that Don Quixote had gone crazy by wanting to be a knight errant from reading all his chivalry books. So when he wasn't home out on adventures, they burned all his books. And these hypocrites, that's the barber, that's the priest, that's the niece, and I'm not sure who that is, one of the servant ladies. Basically, they had read many of the books and they loved them, so they were going to burn them. Pretty hypocritical. Okay, here's Don Quixote with his sidekick Sancho Panza. Don Quixote is tall and thin. Sancho Panza is short and fat, rides a donkey. Don Quixote rides a horse, Rocinante. So it's very entertaining. It's all kind of crazy. Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, their hearts are in the right place. They're very fun, very lovable, and nice. But they get themselves into foolish mischief routinely, like Don Quixote mistakes a windmill for a giant, and he goes charging at it with it ready to joust and gets unhorsed, to say the least. And that's kind of reminding me, like I said, of McDougall going head to head with these big associations trying to make informed consent real for mastectomy versus lumpectomy. This is just a painting of Don Quixote thinking about what he's going to write. Miguel Cervantes thinking about what he's going to write for Don Quixote. His hand looks a little funny because his hand got wounded severely in the Battle of Lepanto against the Ottoman Turks. And he was a real heroic guy. Spent a lot of time in slavery and in prison. And a lot of the best writers, they come out of a phase of exile. And that time in exile helps them to develop an objective point of view, which enables them to write unique, great work. Okay. Maybe I'll just do these two. Well, actually, I think I'll stop right here for literature at this point. I hope that was interesting.